Hello, this is Colin Dixon from N-Screen Media, and I'm here at the Video News N-Screen Media booth at NAB 2013, and I'm talking with Sean Murphy, who's a Senior Marketing Manager at Cisco Systems. And we're going to talk about Videoscape Unity and some of the cool things that you're doing with Videoscape Unity, Sean. Why don't we start off with hybrid cloud? One of the things we're in a sort of between world, aren't we? We're sort of between IP networks and the old bespoke, proprietary networks. Right. So how are operators and content providers moving into the cloud and creating and operating in this hybrid cloud environment?
Yeah, well, the steps that we see happening are mostly for this show at the broadcaster and multi-screen distribution providers. What they're faced with a fundamental choice as to whether they can address sort of the economies of scale on their own dime or whether they outsource. We think that as they get closer and closer to less file-based content and more broadcast content, in other words, merging linear and file-based, the control over the process becomes more important. So that sort of tends to weight the argument towards resources that they own and control. On the other hand, they also need to be able to burst out to cheap resources for things that are less critical to their workflows or simply are nice handoffs from a distribution standpoint. So you really say it's not all one thing, it's not an either-or model. So in many cases you say you could outsource to an external cloud provider, which does have some value for things that are fairly generic to manage, like simple content distribution. On the other hand, things that are more mission critical, you're pushing around uncompressed video, you're doing editing and live production on the fly, you absolutely want control of the quality and the process of creating that content. And that's where the hybrid model becomes really important, is that you can control in your own resources the things that are critical to creating great content, and at the same time, when you come to the things that are less critical and maybe you've downsampled from uncompressed down to HLS streaming content, it's less critical, and you can take advantage of the scale and expand sort of elastic resources that are available in the cloud to serve that need. So I think the risk for content providers and broadcasts right now is to assume that it's an all or nothing game, right? Where you have to make a choice to either invest in heavy duty, gigantic scale to serve your peak requirements, or outsource everything. And in fact, we think that the real game is taking advantage of hardware assets they have now, understanding that there are ways to control them with software in a data center environment that they control, and then for the subsequent stages of the process that need to burst to accommodate big traffic spikes or simply a lot of content or a lot of diversity, they can take advantage of public resources. And the key to that is really building those solutions around open standards. So the standards that whether it's a standard like OpenStack that allows you to make a solution more mobile between different cloud environments, but it also takes a significant amount of orchestration that people can understand that the cloud becomes simply a resource that they're not really thinking about, they're just using it as part of the workflow. And that it's really that orchestration that I think that Cisco is actually spending a lot of time on.
It really seems like we've changed, there's been a seed change in the last year or two between this and last year's NAB even. It seems like it is just assumed now, if you're in the business of content, that you're in the multi-screen business, that you have to be delivering in the multi-screen. And so that seems to be also pushing in the direction of cloud. I remember talking to a cable company very recently, and what the guy made the statement to me that it's ultimately it's all in the cloud. Right. Is that very much what you're hearing from your customers, and is this a key driver behind Unity and what you're doing? It is a key driver.
So the cloud power is a key driver. But if you look at even the large media companies today, that often the multi-screen distribution part of their business is kind of a siloed business unit. That's kind of a science project, right? Yep. So what's happening now is they're understanding that it's really one business model, and the business model is reaching the audience, and that the audience is changing. So the change, how you reach key demographics and on what device and with what business model matters, and there's compelling reasons to converge those things. There's a lot of money and sort of legacy infrastructure and key business models on the broadcast side that are really not easily replicated on the multi-screen side. So it's really those things coming together, the advantages of interactivity and multiple devices and multi-screen merged with the big media discussions of how $70 billion of advertising in the United States is addressed in a year. So those kinds of discussions become less rooted in technological projects and more rooted in core business issues to move forward. We are seeing a rapid acceleration on the content provider side to make sure that the cloud is part of the whole discussion. So it's becoming, in fact, some of our solutions that we're showcasing at NAB are really focused on the convergence of linear content through the cloud. So real-time transcoding of events that then have real-time ad insertion solutions and monetization, so that the assumption of broadcasting gets redefined around the broadcast experience still exists, but it now exists on whatever screen you happen to pick up, as opposed to it being this separate model that nobody's really sure how to make money with, right?
That's something that I'm really seeing as well. I think it's really a big change, is that there's lots of discussion now. And not just discussion, companies are actually delivering live streams online as opposed to just on-demand assets, right? And is that creating additional demands on Unity that are troubling, or you're actually easily serving them? Or tell us about.
I think the pace is accelerating, and that hasn't really surprised us, because it's something we've been preaching for a long time. But now it's sort of like the discussions that we had with cable providers when we started talking about IP as a good thing to the home, right? Broadcast and media are also coming around that some of the legacy solutions are holding them back, right? And that there are transitions that take place, and some of them are very tactical responses that they have. They're suddenly dealing with many times the amount of data or streams that they have to encode, and there's some process-intensive stuff that comes with that. Or maybe it's also, oh gee, in order to really reach and engage the audience, we need to capture and manage metadata and more cohesively across the value chain, as opposed to losing it every time it goes to a satellite, right?
Yeah.
So there are some little simple tactical things that really, cumulatively add up to really transformational opportunities in television.
One of the things that I've noticed as well is that the use of second screens is not just for the delivery of video, it's for delivering more immersive experiences. But to do this means the production of the shows has to change, right? So now this is an area that has actually been very, very slow to move to standardizations. I think I remember hearing something about Sky in the UK, that they only just recently moved away from videotapes, which sounds absurd. So you're doing something with Fox. Tell us what you're doing with Fox, because that's a great example of a company that's switching.
It is. So Fox generally is often kind of on the technological forefront. They're very good that way, right? And in this case, the solution is pretty simple, and it's not driven by technology. It's driven by the business of selling advertising. And in the solution that we put together, working with mDialog, it uses the live broadcast stream, and then does encoding into an ABR format. So we're sort of conditioning it for distribution over a conventional CDN. And at the same time maintaining the timestamps or the advertising standards that say who has what rights to what content at what time in the stream. And then they sell that advertising just like they would normal advertising. So it's not like a separate niche digital advertising sale. It's fundamentally mated to their national, regional, and in some ways it's sort of like less functionality, but it's more rooted in the business model. So that's interesting. But what's also interesting is when they put that linear stream, it's not just, oh, I now have a TV experience on an iPad. It's you then take advantage of the device as well. So you have protection of the ads and the value that comes with the ad, and the consistency that they need to tell their advertisers. But when that lands on a device that's open to interaction, you can embed in the additional pieces, like learn more about a given car ad that brings up a 3D model, and you spin it around to see a little more detail. And then when you click out of that ad, you can resume that live stream. You come right back in. So it's really well orchestrated between protecting the value of the ad content, also giving the audience more interactive possibilities about how to engage with the content, and then moving on to see the rest of the content that they want to see.
Now, Fox is actually talking about doing 4K production on Ethernet with you.
That's another angle. That is another angle that we're looking at, and this is, you know, in the past with NBC and with the Olympics and kind of historically, we've done a lot in the area of contribution networks, which is getting content from, say, a production venue or a stadium to the post-production facility to assemble the content. Now we're really taking a look at, and those are sort of wide area networks. We're now looking at solutions that take some of the data center technology that we've done and used within the studio itself. So replacing, and this is a very early discussion point, but the idea is to say, take a hard look at HD-SDI as a standard, which is really point-to-point coax connections, and is that the best way? You know, the latest standard for 4K simply replaces those point-to-point solutions with fiber. We think the smarter way, and in fact, was really Fox's idea, was to take advantage of data center routing and switching to have more flexibility in how higher volumes of content would be managed and allow more flexibility in their workflows at the same time. So, and frankly, it makes their investment less rooted in proprietary, you know, fundamentally kind of constrained architecture, and moves in an area where 4K is just another stream, or 8K. Right.
But can they do that with uncompressed 4K?
Yes. Yes. So yes. So 2 hours of 4K content, or something like 56 gigs of content. You know, it's like a 2-hour movie. It's like a lot of content. So we're definitely moving. It is going to move towards fiber and more use of fiber, more robust networks, more robust switching. But if you look at what does it take to push big quantities of data around, those technologies are well established. So it's not like reinventing the wheel. So this is an area where Cisco's in a unique position to take advantage of some of the things we learned from service providers around very high volume routing and switching for video, and then bringing them upstream into the studio to push these huge content, these huge streams around in very high quality. And whether it's native 4K or JPEG 2000, those are all things. Some of those that we support today. 4K we don't yet support, but we're definitely taking a hard look at that. There's another technology that's kind of paired with 4K, which we think is interesting, called HEVC. And HEVC, the promise of HEVC, which is another area we're looking at very closely, I see them as kind of related. It's sort of like you have 4 times the content with 4K, but you've got 4 times the headache, and with HEVC, it gives you some method to sort of manage that at a more rational way and still deliver very high quality. We think some of the opportunities for HEVC are not just in the production environment, but out into mobile environments, where they are bandwidth constrained, people are watching more video over mobile networks. And so HEVC is kind of a natural a natural evolution of that, delivering high definition content over more constrained networks.
Yeah, it certainly looks like...
So again, the Fox example is very much a work in progress, but it does show interesting thinking from the standpoint of our customers bringing solutions to us that are things that we do well, and that we could have been smarter about being in front of, but I think that it's often the collaboration with the customers brings the best ideas, and that's what we're looking at.
Well, yeah, and that's available on your booth, so hopefully everybody will stop by and take a look at that demo.
Indeed.
And Sean, I want to thank you very much for coming by and talking with us.
My pleasure.
Have a good show.
Thank you.